Hey, what up? This is GK. So I'm planning to write AWS Security Specialty exam soon. As you all know, my preparation starts with writing the practice test. So what I thought is I will give an honest attempt writing the practice test without looking at the answers. So this video is completely unfiltered sort of thing where I'm going to go over the questions. So whether the answer is correct or not, we will look at the results after my test is done. So what I would suggest you all is follow along with me while I'm taking the exam. So when I'm attempting the answer, see how I'm approaching to the question and answer, and then also tick it in your book or notepad so that we will review the answers. And lastly, I'm also going to announce the winners of the contest of the giveaway, and I'm going to show you how I have picked them by end of this video. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright folks, so let's start with the first question. The corporate cloud security policy states that communication between the company's VPC and KMS must travel entirely within the AWS network and not use public service endpoints. So what combination of the following actions most satisfies this requirement? Alright, so basically they do not want to expose the communication to internet, and let's look at the options. Add the AWS service VPC condition to AWS KMS key policy, referencing the company's VPC endpoint ID, remove the VPC internet gateway from the VPC and add a virtual private gateway to a VPC. I think this makes sense. This is one option, so they asked us to select two. This is one. Create a VPC endpoint for AWS KMS and private DNS enabled. Not sure about this one. Use the KMS import key feature to securely transfer the AWS KMS key over a VPN. I don't think this is right. Let's remove this. Add the following condition to the AWS KMS key policy. This doesn't seem to be right as well. I think I'm gonna choose between A and C, and I'm gonna go with A, but I'm really not sure about this answer, whether it is A or C. I'm pretty sure about B. Alright, so what do you guys think? Maybe select your option and we'll move to the next question. Okay, feel free to pause the video and select your option and mark that somewhere so that we're going to review those answers by the end of these questions. An application team is designing a solution with two applications. The security team wants the application logs to be captured in two different places because of the applications produce logs with sensitive data. Okay, so this is an interesting question. Basically, is designing a solution with two applications. Security team wants the application logs to be captured in two different places because one of the application produces logs with sensitive data. So there are two applications. One application has sensitive data, so they want to log that separately. Let's look at the options. Which solution meets the requirement with least risk and effort? Use AWS CloudWatch logs to capture all the logs. Write a Lambda function that parses the log file and moves sensitive data to a different log. That's one. Use AWS CloudWatch logs with two log groups with one of each application, and use AWS IAM policy to control access to the log groups as required. Aggregate logs into one file, then use AWS CloudWatch logs and then design two CloudWatch metric filters to filter sensitive data from the logs. Add logic to the application that saves sensitive data logs to EC2 instance local storage. Write a batch script. So this is unnecessarily complicating the whole scenario, so I would completely avoid this. Basically what they're suggesting here is add log to, what they are saying in this option is add logic to the application to save the sensitive data. So basically in your application you would log sensitive data to a different storage and do all that stuff. So this is not recommended. So this is wrong. Add logs to one file is also wrong. I think this makes more sense here for me. So B is probably the right answer for this. Let's look at the answers later. Alright, so a security engineer must set up security group rules for a 3-tier application. Presentation tier is your Apache web server or Nginx web server, whatever, where you have all your web content accessed by the users over the web. This is where users from the internet will have access to. And logic tier is where you have your application logic. It could be RESTful services or web logic or app logic or whatever you want to call that. And the database tier is where you have your data at rest. So which combinations of the following security group rules will allow the application to be secure and functional? The presentation layer allows port 80 and 443 from internet. Okay, so they're asking us to select 3. So this makes sense because only if you do this, you can give access to people from internet from anywhere, because this symbolizes anywhere, right? As you all know, or if you don't know, it is 000/0. It's from anywhere, and 80 is HTTP, right? And 443 is HTTPS with TLS. Okay. Now the second option is data SG, which is a database security group. Allow port 1433 from the presentation layer. Okay, let's look at the other option. Data SG security group allow port 1433 from the logic SG. Okay, so this makes sense. So basically here what it is saying is your logic tier will access the data tier, right? Which makes sense. You do not want your presentation tier or your web server to access the database, because the whole logic of accessing the database would be lying in the application tier, not in the front end. So now we have to select another option, presentation SG, allow port 1433 from this is not correct. Logic SG security group allow for port 4443. Okay, so out of these 3 options, let's start with the logic SG thing. Here it says allow port 443 from anywhere. This is incorrect, because you do not want to access your application tier from anywhere from internet, right? You want to access this only from your web tier. We need to make sure that this is accessible only to your web. So presentation allow port 1433 from data SG, logic allow 1443 from presentation. I think this makes sense. All right, so I think the options are A, C, and E. All right, so let's move on to the next question. A security engineer is working with a product team building a web applications on AWS. The application uses S3 to host the static content, Amazon API gateway to provide the RESTful services, and DynamoDB, NoSQL as the backend data store. The users already exist in a directory that is exposed through a SAML identity provider. So what combination of the following actions should the engineer take to enable users to be authenticated into the web application and call APIs? Let's look at them. So create a custom authorization service using AWS Lambda. Create a SAML identity provider in AWS Cognito to map attributes to the AWS Cognito user and pool attributes. Configure a SAML identity provider to add Amazon Cognito user pool as relying party. Configure Amazon Cognito identity pool to integrate with social login providers. So here, the static content is in S3, right? So you have all your static content, meaning whatever HTML files or whatever JavaScript files you might have, you're having that in the S3. And in the DynamoDB, you have your actual data. So it's a backend data store. So the user will hit the API gateway, and then API gateway will interface with S3 or DB or whatever, right? So that's how the application looks like. The users are already stored in their Active Directory, AD, and they have SAML, they have policy store and data store. That's within their company. So you're not going to have any users stored in database or anything. Now, which of the combination of the following actions should the engineer take to enable users to be authenticated into the web application? So as soon as users, let's say, a user is trying to access the application, user has to be automatically authenticated. And what action should we take for that to happen? Right, so create a custom authorization service using Lambda. So this is not required. Configure a SAML identity provider in AWS Cognito to map attributes to the Amazon Cognito user pool attributes. To add Cognito user pool as a relying party, configure Amazon pool to integrate with social. So this D option is also gone because we're not going to integrate with any social login providers like Facebook or Gmail or whatever, because the company has their own SAML identity provider. Update DynamoDB to store the user emails and passwords. This is incorrect. Update API gateway to use an Amazon Cognito user pool authorizer. After eliminating, I feel like B, C, and F are the right answers. But again, I haven't used Cognito much, so I'm here purely going with an elimination process. And let's see if that is correct. The company is hosting a web application on AWS and is using S3 bucket to store images. Users should have the ability to read objects in the bucket. A security engineer has written the following bucket policy to grant public read access. Okay, so in past I have worked in governance team, so I'm pretty familiar with the policy documents and stuff. So this question I think I can answer. So attempts to read an object, however, receive the error action does not apply to any resources in the statement. Change the IAM permissions by applying put bucket policy permissions. Okay, so here to grant public read access, right? So, and the option here, it is saying put bucket policy permissions, which makes no sense. One quick thing that I can see that, whenever you give objects access, you need to make sure that it has star here. So as soon as you look at the policy, you know that that's an issue. So this is the right answer for this. Again, this is purely based out of my experience, but this you will get it while practicing only. A company decides to place database hosts in its own VPC and set up VPC peering to different VPCs containing the application and web tiers. The application servers are unable to connect to the database. So there is a VPC 1 and VPC 2, let's assume that way. And now we have DB in this VPC and there is application in this VPC. These both are peered, but the application servers are unable to talk to DB. Alright, so now we have to select two options. So check to see if the application servers are in a private subnet or a public subnet. Check the route tables for the application server subnet for routes to the VPC peering connection. Check the NACL's network access control list for the database subnets for rules that allow traffic from internet. Okay, check the database security groups for rules that allow traffic from the application servers. Check to see if the database VPC has an internet gateway. So there is nowhere here, it is talking about internet gateway or anything. So this doesn't make any sense. Remove this and check to see if an application servers are in a private subnet or a public subnet. Also makes no sense to me. Again, we are not talking about any internet thing here. What could go wrong is check the access control list for the database subnets for rules that allow traffic from the internet. This is also not right. So I think the answer is B and D here. Let's verify that later. Okay, so let's move on. When testing a new AWS Lambda function that retrieves items from Amazon DynamoDB table, the security engineer notices that the function was not logging any data to AWS CloudWatch, Amazon CloudWatch logs. The following policy was assigned to the role assumed by the Lambda function. So a Lambda function has a role that is attached to the function, and this is the policy document of that role. Now here it says SID action DynamoDB get item, okay, effect allow, and on all the resources. So which least privilege policy addition would allow this function to log properly? Now we need to add another set of statements here to this policy or add another policy. But basically, what we need to make sure is the Lambda function is able to log its messages into the AWS CloudWatch logs. That, and the most important keyword to understand here is using the least privileged policy. And this is a common thing that you would hear in AWS security specialty exams, which is also called as principle of least privilege, PLP. It's a short form. So meaning that you would give permissions that are only required. That's important to note here. So here, let's start with the first option, resource star and actions logs, all logs, and effect allow. So here you're giving allow and actions on logs star, meaning that all the whatever you see in the wildcard, and for any resource. So this is not correct because it's giving wide permissions. So for this one, resource star and action logs create log stream, this makes sense, but it will only create a log stream. We need to put the logs as well, right? In the C, we have resources star logs create log group, create log stream, put log events. This is probably right because you're giving only the right actions, the correct minimum actions that are required. But let's also look at D. So in the D, you have logs create log group, log stream, log group, delete log group, delete log stream. I don't think you need delete permissions when you're trying to just send logs to the CloudWatch. So I don't think this answer is correct, but this is right with minimum required permissions. But hopefully, let's see when we look at the answers. Okay, so now a company is building a data lake on AWS S3. The data consists of millions of small files containing sensitive information. The security team has the following requirement for the architecture. Data must be encrypted in transit using TLS. Data must be encrypted at rest, KMS. A bucket must be private, but if the bucket is accidentally made public, the data must remain confidential. By the way, we need to select two options. Enable AES 256 encryption using server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed encryption keys SSE S3 on the S3 bucket. Enable default encryption with server-side encryption with AWS KMS managed keys on the S3 bucket. Add a bucket policy that includes deny if a put object request does not include secure transport. Add a bucket policy that allows uploads and downloads from a corporate internet. Only enable Messi to monitor and act on changes on the S3. So the first requirement is data must be encrypted in transit. So this one will cover that. And the second one is data must be encrypted at rest. So for that, I'm confused between A and B. Let me know what you think. You know the answer. This makes sense to me because I remember in my company we have used AES 256 encryption. Okay, so moving on. A security engineer must ensure that all API calls are collected across all company accounts and that they are preserved online and are instantly available for analysis for 90 days. The compliance reasons, this data must be restorable for 7 years. Now, which steps must be taken to meet the retention needs in scalable, cost-effective way? To enable AWS CloudTrail logging across all the accounts to a centralized Amazon S3 bucket with the versioning enabled, set a lifecycle policy to move the data to Amazon Glacier daily and expire the data after 90 days. Enable AWS CloudTrail logging across all accounts to S3 bucket. Set a lifecycle policy to expire the data in each bucket after 7 years. Enable AWS CloudTrail logging across all accounts to Amazon Glacier. Set a lifecycle policy to expire the data after 7 years. So this doesn't make sense. So basically here what we have to do is first we need to send the logs to S3 bucket, right? and then those logs must be instantly available for 90 days. And then on this bucket you will have lifecycle policy to send it to Glacier. That way it is much cheaper, and you can get the data whenever you require, and you can store that for 7 years. So here it makes no sense, because here they're asking us to send the data to directly to Glacier. To enable AWS CloudTrail logging across all accounts to a centralized S3 bucket, set a lifecycle policy to move the data to Glacier after 90 days and expire the data after 7 years. Okay, let's look at B, enable AWS CloudTrail logging across all. So this is not efficient way of doing it, because so let's say if you have 100 accounts, you do not want to send logs to 100 S3 buckets, right? So this could be right, because here it is talking about centralized AWS S3 bucket. So now we are left with two options, and this makes sense because you want to send the data to a centralized AWS S3 bucket. And here also it is talking about centralized AWS S3 bucket. The only issue with A is it is talking about versioning and all, which is not required for this requirement. So we can just go with D. Let's see if that is correct. Okay. So now let's talk about the 10th question. I guess this is the final question. Yeah, this is the final question. A security engineer has been informed that a user's access key has been found on GitHub. Wow, that's a huge breach. The engineer must ensure that this access key cannot continue to be used, and must assess whether the access key was used to perform any unauthorized activities. So which steps must be taken to perform these activities? So let's first go with the first option, review the user's IAM permissions and delete any unrecognized or unauthorized resources. Yeah, you could do that, but first we need to make sure that the user access key has to be deleted, right? We need to take first action of that. Delete the user, review IAM, review CloudWatch logs. CloudWatch logs provides resource level logs, but we need more than that. So delete or rotate the user's key, review AWS CloudTrail logs. This makes sense in all regions, and delete any unrecognized or unauthorized resources. Instruct the user. This is a dumb option. This makes no sense. Okay, now I think this makes a lot of sense. So I wrote all these answers that we have marked here in a notepad and in my book. So I hope you all have completed by now. If you haven't completed, pause this video and go back and complete all the answers. Now let's verify the answers here. The first option that I've selected was AB. So I was wrong there. It is A and C. So an IAM policy can deny access to the AWS KMS except through your VPC endpoint with the following thing. So I did not know this. Okay, something to learn before I take the exam, I guess. So that's one which I got wrong. So the second one I've selected B. Each application log can be configured to send logs to a specific CloudWatch log group, which makes sense. So this is right. The third I selected ACE, which is correct. And fourth I have selected what? Maybe let me go back and see, because in my book I have written as 4 only C. Or I have selected B, C, F. Okay. Now let's go back, see what is the right answer. B, C, F. Cool. That's right. This was I was not really confident about this, but I just did it through elimination. Something that I have to prepare before the exam for this one. So Cognito is another important thing that I have to prepare. Okay, 5 resource section should match with the type operation and the ARN to include star, which is the right answer. And this was purely based out of my experience. Again, you have to practice this to understand this question. And 6 I have selected BD. That was right as well. It was a straightforward question, I guess. I don't remember exactly. And 7, I have selected C. That was right because we need to just give basic Lambda permissions to create log group, create log stream, and put log events. The other one was closer, but that had delete and all, which is not required. Okay, so 8, I have selected AC. So this is where I made another mistake. It is BC. Bucket encryption using KMS will protect both in case disks are stolen as well as if the bucket is public. This is because AWS KMS key would need to have privilege granted to it for users outside of AWS. And HTTPS will protect the data in transit. So for 8th, C was right. That was for, I think, HTTPS thing. This is where I was confused between first and second option, I think, if I remember correctly. Okay, I need to work on this part, bit more on the KMS, clearly, because I got 2 wrong answers related to the KMS, so I need to work on those. And 9th one meets all the requirements and is cost effective by using lifecycle policy, which is correct. That is D. And 10th was the easiest one, removes keys and audits the environment. Always you have to use CloudTrail, not CloudWatch. All right, so that's about this video, guys. I hope you got something out of this video. And if you're preparing for AWS security exam, start off by practicing, by going through this practice test. It doesn't matter whether you got it right or wrong. Obviously you will get a lot of things wrong in the first attempt, but the whole point of going through this is to understand what are your weak areas, or what are the things that you might expect in the exam. So with that, now let's go into the most important thing that you all are waiting for the last couple of days, which is announcing the winners of the giveaway. All right, folks, so the winners are, here we go: Machireddy Sham, Sundar, Praveen Tripathi, Yash Thakkar, Girish A, Sashi Deep. Congratulations to you all. So I have increased this to 5. Please reach out to me over my email and with the screenshot that you have posted the comment. I will reach out to you with the address and I'll ship out the book. Again, congratulations to you guys. Enjoy the book. I hope New Year will bring more joy to you all. And I wish you all a very happy and prosperous New Year 2021. Thank you all for sticking around. I'm going to come up with more awesome videos in this new year. Thank you all. Bye.